Okay, so I'll record today's lesson. It's kind of like Monday, right? It's cool. It's Monday, and then Friday. It's actually Friday. Because we had our vacation day. Okay, so I've got server 1 and server 2 up and going. I'm going to go ahead and log in each one of them just to verify what we had accomplished. So server 1, notice I'm logging into Contoso Administrator. Server 2 should be administrator at contoso.com. That should be logging in too. If not, you can switch user and log in as administrator at contoso.com. That's probably left over from Friday's class. I'm going to go to server 1 and just investigate some things. So server 1 became the domain controller for the forest and the domain Contoso. If I look under the tools menu, we have Active Directory users and computers. The fifth one down, we launch it. It will show us a graphical representation of what the database looks like. The database of user accounts, computer accounts, and groups and other stuff. So with that launched, under domain controllers, you should have an object server 1 in there. Under computers, it should show that you have server 2 under computers. We should have joined that to our domain. It's acting like a client, or the accurate term that Microsoft uses, a member server. It's a Microsoft server that's not running domain services. It's doing something else, like sharing out printers or sharing out file shares, or maybe being a web server or something. Of course, right now it's not doing anything. We didn't assign any, we haven't configured any roles on it. It's just, but everybody should see server 2 under computers. Everybody see that? And we've been talking about client server, right? And that it's centralized management. Help to lower total cost of ownership, where an IT person doesn't have to get up and leave his cubicle. He can sit in his cubicle all day long and manage the entire network. That's not ever 100% true. There's always some network connectivity issue or something where that you are not able to remotely manage. The firewall turned on and blocking your remote access. You do have to get up and move around, which is good. You don't want to sit in the cubicle all day. Your health will get low on that. Lots of IT people have, most of them that I know in the field, they have like a little counter to see how much they walk that day, and if they don't get enough exercise, then they go to the gym. Keep their health up. So that's just a health tip leading into my randomness here. So we're going to go back to centralized management, in that server 2 is now joined into the domain. It's connected into contoso.com, so we should be able to centrally manage it. I should not need to go to server 2 to do any more configurations. I should be able to do it remotely now. And I'm going to attempt to do that. So from server 1, I'm going to try to finish configuring server 2 just for the centralized management portion of your client server setup. I'm going to close down Active Directory users and computers. And if anybody doesn't have server 2 added in, let me know so we can troubleshoot that. If I go to all servers in Server Manager, I see server 1. Okay? But I have more than one server, right, in my network now. I've got 2 of them. Well, how do I get the other server in there? Can you figure it out? Can you get the other server in there without me showing you? Does Microsoft make it easy enough for you to click around on enough things to figure out what to do? I'll give you a few seconds there to try to get server 2 in the list. I tried to right click, that didn't work. I have a task button. That doesn't look like anything. I got some menus at the top of the screen. So what's the correct menu should I click on? Manage. We look under there, we have add roles and features. When you look a little bit further down there, we have one that says add servers. Cool. We just happen to call our servers actually server 1 and 2. So I'm going to add server. I'm going to click find now. Not even worry about searching with anything because this is just a tiny lab. There's not thousands of computers. If you go to UAMS, you wouldn't want to do that at UAMS. They have, in 2017, they had between 28 and 29,000 nodes on their network. So you wouldn't want to just click search now. It would have taken a long time and taken up some RAM to list all of those. And you would add a humongous scroll bar. So you'd want to be a little more specific on what you were searching for at UAMS there in Little Rock. So yeah, there's big networks in the state. Server 2 is in the list, so I'll just click on it. And there's a little arrow here that highlights in the middle. If I click, it moves it over into the selected server list. Server 1's already added into Server Manager, so I don't need to add it again. And click OK. Yes? And yours didn't find server 2. So, cool troubleshooting. And it's great to have little mistakes here and there and have to fix it. That's what companies hire you for. Well, you implement stuff, but the majority of your day is you're fixing stuff that's broke. Still reminds me of a friend I like to watch, like Stargate, SG-1 and stuff. And he says, Stargate at Atlantis, I think, said, something's always broken, they're fixing it. I'm like, well, that's life. It's like, that's a great show, that's why I like it. He goes, well, I guess if I actually think about it, I suppose so. I'm like, you talk to people in the International Space Station, I bet they're constantly waiting for something to break and trying to fix it. With Apollo 13, when the capsule exploded trying to get to the moon, and they had to fix that to get back to Earth alive. That's a good movie. If you haven't watched that. So that's the deal. Something's going to break. You've got to fix it. Okay, we added server 2 into the server 1's server manager. You don't have to do this on a server. You could be on a Windows 10 machine. You can install Server Manager on a Windows 10. It's got to be Windows 10 Pro or Windows 10 Enterprise. You can install Server Manager and you can access and add all your servers in and not actually have to remote desktop or get into the servers. I did mention Microsoft recommends servers be deployed without a graphical interface. That's because you can have Server Manager and all these tools that's got the you got a video card and you can display the graphics on the client machine. Okay, once we've added that in, we notice the exclamation point comes back to the Server Manager on Server 1 because it detects both servers now, and it also has read the configuration on Server 2 and realizes there's a role service that's not been configured. So when I hit the drop down, that link appears for Server 2. And this is client server. Server 2 is basically a client right now. I can control it centrally from one spot, either from a Windows 10 desktop or from here wherever the server manager is running and displaying on a computer screen, I can now manage all the computers under Contelso.com. Huge benefit, huge cost saving. That's why everybody still runs Microsoft Server for that central administration point. Now, a lot of the other products they'll run on Linux, but as far as centrally controlling the clients and everything, they're still using Active Directory somewhere, maybe in Azure Cloud or on-prem, like on-prem. That's a cool short thing. On-premise. At your company, you actually got the physical servers installed and running. Okay, click Promote this server to a domain controller. The target should say server 2 because, well, yeah, server 1's already a domain controller. We can't promote it. After some thorough network broadcasting and investigation, it determined that server 2 doesn't exist anywhere, and we're cool. Nothing's throwing up a fit that we should not be able to upgrade it. And it probably checked the version, made sure that it was the correct functional level and all, and have the capability to become a domain controller. And now we get our 3 options here. We can add a forest, add a new domain, or we can add a domain controller to an existing domain. So here's the question. Do we have an existing domain? Yes. What is it? Contelso. And it's got 1 domain controller. So what are the 3 options do you think we need to click? The first one. We're going to add a domain controller to an existing domain. That's the most common one, and that's why it's by default selected when this runs. Rarely would you do the other 2. And it's already found Contelso.com. That's pretty cool. We got another little section here. It says we need to supply credentials. If we ran this from server 2 logged in as administrator at Contelso.com, it would have already picked up that we had full admin rights and would not have asked that. Since we're running this remotely, this dialog box doesn't know who's logged in. So we got to click change and supply the correct. Notice it says domain down there, so if I type administrator, I noticed that the logon to down there, well, it doesn't say logon to, but I notice it stays Contelso, which makes sense. They wouldn't try to change it to local computer because you can't join a domain with the local computer account. So I don't have to finish this out with at Contelso.com. I can just put administrator because that stayed the same. And I put the password in. The extremely secure pass1234. Click OK. So if you get that wrong later on in the dialog box, don't know where, when it finally starts trying to connect, you'll get an error. Hopefully you got that right. Hopefully it would have already made that connection. I don't know when it actually does the check to see if you type this in correctly. Now what should I do? Probably just click next because I don't see anything else to click on. So this here is specific or specified domain controller capabilities and site information. The first checkbox is grayed out. Domain name system. I mean, it's requiring it to be a domain name server, DNS server. The global catalog can be unchecked. This is where you go read a lot of engineering articles on how replication happens between the servers and the best speed and everything. And for this install, we're going to uncheck global catalog. We're going to go to a website that helps explain this configuration. I think I've got it linked either in week 2 or week 3. The directory store mode password, we'll go ahead and just do that one we had documented. You put in that secure, fireproof, safe. Remember that from Friday? Yeah. Pass 1, 2, 3, 4. It's our imaginary. How big is your fireproof safe that you imagine in your head? You thinking of Indiana Jones style tombs that you're storing this secret information in? Okay, I'll just go next. DNS options can be ignored, just go next. It gives us stability at this point. If for some reason our WAN connection is really slow between where the one domain controllers are at, you could make a backup of the Active Directory configuration and drive it or mail it and have it copy the information off of a DVD or a thumb drive or something. That could be a possibility. And then once it comes up, any changes it would replicate from the central place, but that's probably rare to have to install for media. The next is, you could pick a particular domain controller, or you could just let it auto choose the domain controller. In our case, we only have one domain controller, so whether we pick server 1 or let it auto choose, it's going to pick server 1, so it doesn't really matter here. Probably any domain controller would be the normal, is just to not make any changes here and go next. Where is it going to keep the database stored? You normally keep the defaults, again, unless you're, like UAMS, something that big, AutoZone, Dollar General, stuff like that. The Active Directory, the number of users and stuff in those, you might need to think, does this need to have its own hard drive? So I'm going to go next. And there's all our review options. We can view the script if you want to, see what's going to be typed in, run at the background. We're going to run a PowerShell script called install Active Directory domain controller. It's going to have several options. Global catalog. No global catalog is set to true. That's kind of like backwards, isn't it? I would think there'd be a switch for global catalog and you set it to false so it wouldn't turn on, but this is a switch for no global catalog, but don't install it. Turn that on. And all the options going to join Contessa.com. So we're going to let the dialog do that, but we could paste that into a command prompt and it would promote. We'd have to paste it on the server too, or remotely connect to it, make it run remotely. They just click next and install. After it checks everything, at this point in time, after I clicked install, it will upgrade server 2, reboot it, and it'll come up as a domain controller. When I check Active Directory users and computers, after the reboot, it will move it from computers to the domain controllers folder automatically. So we've got probably a 5-10 minute wait now. So that was really fast. That was like less than 5 minutes, and it says this server is successfully configured as the main controller. Yes.
I have the inauguration and they just welcome the way you got out of the
Okay, well my system rebooted server 2. Supposedly, if I look under my tools and Active Directory users and computers, I've already closed down the dialog box for making it a second one a domain controller. I notice there's nothing under computers anymore. And I'm going to click on domain controllers, and ta-da, server 1 and server 2 are both under there. That's what you should see if you are successful. Let's look at the columns. We got the name column, which is self-explanatory. The type, well, they're computers. That should be quite self-explanatory. Then DC stands for domain controller type. One of them's GC, stands for global catalog, and the other one just says DC, meaning it's just a domain controller. So yeah, they're both domain controllers, but the one that's GC has got something extra called a global catalog. So way back in how to, like, I don't know how to explain that, but I used to be able to explain it real well, but now you got to think way back in history, back, you know, in black and white TV, and they were making dirt for the first time. They had something called a phone book. The phone book would have, you know, somebody's name in it, and then they'd have like their address and phone number out beside it, and that's about all. They wouldn't have, you know, that the person was white, Asian, black, and how much money they made, where they worked at. They wouldn't have all that extra information about that person. So the phone book was just a quick way to look up where somebody was and their phone number. That's sort of how the global catalog works in Active Directory. That server is used mostly for if you've got multiple domains. Like here on the university, Jonesboro created the forest, and then they've got another domain that they've got the faculty and students in, and then they've got other domains for BB, and they got domain for Newport and Mountain Home and a bunch of other. They've probably got 12, 15 different domains out there. So the global catalog is going to maintain just basically the account name and where it's located for a quick lookup. If you needed information about the user's, say, phone number, email, any of the extra stuff about the user, once you made that quick lookup in the global catalog, it's like, oh, this is in this domain, so then you would contact the domain controller where that account's locally to pull any other information. It just helps keep things separated out, so replication and everything doesn't have to be kept up between all the different domains. I thought that was funny about ancient times. And me having to explain what a phone book is. Some of you may have seen phone books, but they're rare. When was the last time you seen a phone book?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago? It's not too far back. The big yellow pages that used to be sent, I don't remember how many years ago. It's been a long time since I had a yellow page. I've seen the local phone company throw like the small town phone book. So I've not seen the big yellow page in a while. In a few years, there'll be some people they've not seen a phone book. When was the last time you looked up something in an encyclopedia? Do you know what an encyclopedia is?
4 or 5 years ago.
So, it's been a while. I don't know. I guess it was the 90s the last time I looked at anything in an encyclopedia. Pre-95? I guess 96, something like that.
Then you started using Encarta on Windows.
Yeah. I don't know if I had Encarta, if I had a... I know there's Encarta Encyclopedia and there was something else. I think I don't remember which one I had. Come on a CD or DVD or something. Yeah, then we just went to wikis. Google came about and the encyclopedia just disappeared. So crazy how things change. So yeah, server 1's the global catalog. If there was multiple domains, it would maintain a small subset of information about all the objects in the entire forest on there. So if you had to look up somebody remote, it would go to that one. Because most of the time when you're administering stuff, you're administering stuff that's in your domain. You're administering computers and user accounts that's in your domain. And only if you're sharing resources between two companies would you need to use the global catalog. And there's a whole deal about global catalog and how to set up and configure Active Directory that I would think most administrators wouldn't have a clue what to do. They'd probably just have everything checked as global catalog and wouldn't go anything past that. But there's a lot more engineering behind the scenes, especially if you have remote locations and stuff and different subnets in your network. There's a lot of engineering you need to go in behind that because the computers are dumb. It's not a human that doesn't know how your network's set up. There's a lot of stuff you have to throw in there and configure. We're not going to get too in-depth into that, but we will do the next step. We've set up Active Directory, brand new forest. Very rare that you do that. And so is this next step, configuring what needs to be where. Well, this next step's a little more important because if you upgrade to like 2019 server, you need to be aware of these options. That's not this class. That's this class. So I have it in week 2. I've got that link. Those, maybe it's in week 3. Souls blog. Souls blog is what I'm looking for. S-O-L-E. Soul. So in week 3, I've got a website that you could go. I tried to go read all the Microsoft documentation, and Microsoft just made it seem like more confusing. Maybe I just wasn't, I don't know, not as smart as I thought I am. So this dude just says, here's how it should work, and it works best if you do it this way. Like, cool, I understand that. I can figure that. So that's why I put this link. He's got, I think, one of the best explanations, especially for just a common network here. Maybe one that's got a little bit more roles. So you might want to read all of his page here. I mean, it stops at 2008 server, but it's true for all the way up to the current Active Directory. And goes current, even 2019 still has flexible single master operation roles, FSMO. So the different pieces of agent software that runs on the domain controllers. If you have more than one domain controller, there's components of Active Directory that they need you to make sure that there's a leader that actually maintains control. Even though they're all supposed to be synced and replicated, you still need to have one person to double check to make sure that if you're adding a user or adding something to the network, you're not making a duplicate. There are 5 roles or leaders in Active Directory, traffic cops or whatever. We have a Schema Master. That one is really hard to view in any type of graphical configuration that's hidden by default. The only thing that messes with the schema is a Microsoft installer. So the schema, when we installed the forest, it asked us what function level we wanted to be at. Remember that? I had some drop downs. You can select as far back as 2008 server as a function level. So the schema is talking about a database, and the schema is actually the tables and the columns and stuff that are in the Active Directory database. So in their user account, you could store stuff, the user's first name, last name, their phone number, their email address, all that stuff. So that's what you can store is basically the schema. So it's the structure of the Active Directory database itself. You don't want to be able to accidentally screw that up. If you screw that up, the whole thing breaks. So the only thing that really messes with the schema is the Microsoft installer. So if you're upgrading to 2019 server, the installation wizard could upgrade the schema so the function level could be increased. Or if you're installing another Microsoft product like Exchange Server for email, it could expand out the Active Directory so it could accept the new information that Exchange would bring in, like calendaring and conference rooms and stuff like that. Because Active Directory by default, I don't think it has conference rooms and scheduling of meetings and stuff like that, so that database could be extended. So that's one role. And one that you normally can't mess with. The only time you'd ever need to mess with that is if server 1 had to be upgraded and server 1 had to be taken off the network. This would be a good one to document. Server 1 is the first server that was created Contoso. First one that created the forest. So you would need to go Google, how do I transfer that to another computer because I'm about to turn it off forever. So you have that knowledge. We're not going to transfer it, but that's like 90% of the battle, knowing that that exists. Knowing that you need to change oil in your car. You may not know how to change oil in your car, but you know it needs to be changed. At least knowing that, you can take it somewhere or you can research how to do that. So that's really key. That's why the classes are kind of going through. You might not know about Schema Master if you just watch some YouTube videos, install a domain controller. So for future use, upgrade purposes, remember you have to go figure out how to move the FSMO roles if you're ever upgrading and decommissioning old servers. They've been doing that on this campus the past year, upgrading 2008 domain controllers to 2019. So they've been having to transfer roles and stuff to new systems and then take the old ones offline. Typically about every 10 years is when that's done. And why 10 years? That's how long Microsoft supports the server. And you normally, so you don't upgrade from like 2008 server to 2012. It's normally 2008 to 2016. It's normally like a double jump, or it has been based on Microsoft's release cycle. About every 3 years they put out a server. So you're skipping an upgrade like 1 or 2 versions that you're jumping over. Because if it's working, you don't want to mess with anything. You've got all your other people clicking on phishing emails and breaking everything else. You don't have time to worry about getting all of this. So hopefully you can remember that this is a thing. You need to really research what all needs to be done before you can shut off an old domain controller. What needs to be moved off of it, especially the FSMO roles. The domain naming master, that one is easier. There is a graphical tool that you don't have to do anything. You can find it and move it if you need to. If you are running that wizard, remember that middle radio button that said add a new domain to an existing forest? If you click that button, that's when the domain naming master is right at that point. When you click that radio button and it gives you a little box, okay, what's the new domain name? You tap it in there, and when you hit next, That's about the only time the domain naming master is ever asked. They have to go to it and go, hey, you're supposed to have the most up-to-date list of the domains in Active Directory. Does this exist? If not, then it goes, nope, it doesn't exist. And then the wizard basically goes, okay, I'm going to make this domain. The domain name master will be the first one to record it, and it will replicate to everybody else. But it has to be online before you can add a domain. Now all the other domain controllers will learn it and have a copy of it, but it's the one that has to get it first. In case two people's running a wizard at the same time in two different cities, they all still have to ask that one server, that one location, so if they click next at the same time, the server can see both queries come in and not accidentally create two domains with different unique IDs at the same time with the same name and make everything just explode. So we're at break time. Let's take a break. We'll come back. I want to continue talking about these three. We'll have to move some stuff over in a little bit too. Okay, so we come off break. So we're going to continue talking about the flexible single master operation roles. We got a couple of others. We got RID master, infrastructure master, and Bdc Emulator. So the Bdc Emulator is basically our central timing clock. It used to act as something different back before Active Directory was created. Back with the 90s, we had NT 4.0. We just had domain services. We didn't have Active Directory domain services. It was, you only had basically single domain. You didn't have the ability to create multiple domains in the tree type structure. So Bdc stood for primary domain controller. It had a lot different role back in the day. Today it's just basically to make sure that all the computers are running at the same time. And for backward compatibility for antique stuff. But its main role is timekeeper. The RID master, that's designed for giving other domain controllers blocks of addresses. Not addresses, it's blocks of numbers, so that if a new user is created, they can look at a list and go ahead and add a new user to the network. If you're using Active Directory users and computers and you're adding people, that tool could be connected to any of the domain controllers that might be running at your company. So when you're adding a new user, you want to make sure you don't accidentally duplicate a unique identifier when you're creating that user. So that's the purpose of the RID master. It's giving each domain control like a range. It's like here's 5,000 numbers. You can create up to 5,000 users on your computer alone before you need to ask for another list. And it'll give another 5,000 to another domain controller in a different range, so that each one can make sure that they have their own cached list that they know nobody else is going to have. That's sort of what the RID master is for. And infrastructure master does kind of similar to the global catalog. It's supposed to maintain kind of a copy of everything, from my understanding. Okay, well, you can read all of his stuff and other people's notes below, but he says, for best practice, the global catalog service should not be run on the computer running the infrastructure master service, because they kind of both do the same thing. It'd be just like double duty on processing power. So he said it's important that the global catalog server not be on the infrastructure master unless all of your domain controllers are running global catalog. So I take it that I probably only want one as a global catalog and infrastructure master on one of them that's not, and that would make things run better. That's what I'll read. And he says, so server 1 up here should run global catalog. Server 2 should be pushed RID master, infrastructure master, and Bdc master and not run global catalog. plus administratively, it's easiest to implement it this way, because those three roles that are on server 2 is actually in one dialog box. So you can go to one dialog box and move all three of them to server 2 and be done with it. Domain master is in a separate configuration area, and Schema Master, you have to go to the command line and register some DLLs and do some more command line stuff and add a snap-in into something called MMC to be able to see it. So it's quite convoluted to be able to see the Schema Master and be able to use the utility to move it. So it's quite simple to implement his strategy. Our additional domain controller, we simply unchecked global catalog on it. And we're simply going to say move RID master, infrastructure master, and PDC master to it. And it'll be as his blog here post out. It'll make the systems run most efficient. So let's go ahead and implement his practice. It's quite simple. We go to our server manager. I'm going to click that. Go to our server manager and open up Active Directory users and computers. It's already open on my screen under the tools menu. If you right click on the domain, you see a menu option called Operations Masters. That's the closest thing that I can see to flexible single operation masters. I'm going to click on that. And we see a dialog box here that's got the RID master, the PDC, and the infrastructure tab across it. It shows the current operation master as server 1 on my screen. And then it says I can click the change button and transfer it to server 1 on my screen. Well, that's a little bit of an issue. Yours might actually say server 2 or something different. That's cool. You could just click change if it said something different. But if I try to change it from server 1 to server 1, it's not going to do anything. It's like pointing at somebody and going, keep wearing your shirt. Like, okay, why did you have to tell me that? I wasn't planning on taking it off. I'm not that weird. So, if I expand out this center divider here, I notice that my tool is connected to server 1 at the top. Yeah, Will Ferrell is who I was talking about. You should probably tell Will Ferrell to keep his clothes on if you ever watched his movies. Okay, so right click Active Directory users and computers and click on change domain controller. Pick on the domain controller that you want the flexible single master operation roles to be transferred to, which is server 2 in our case, and click OK. It will now show that we're connected to server 2. And go back and check out the Operation Masters dialog box. What has changed? Anything? It shows server 2 instead of server 1, so that's pretty cool. So now that I can click on change. That was pretty quick. Server 2 to server 2. I can go to the other tab. The Bdc Emulator is on server 1 now, but I can click change and it'll change it to server 2. And I can go to Infrastructure tab and do the same thing. Sometimes that's quick, sometimes it takes a little bit. We did this on our campus, was it this past summer? The summer before, I don't remember. We switched it over. It was a lot faster on the production network. I thought it would have been a lot slower. But I thought the lab network, 2 servers, I think a production network with thousands of user accounts and 6 domain controllers would take longer, but it didn't. So that's done. So this stuff is pretty rare that you would ever mess with this, unless you're, working at a consulting firm and you're deploying Active Directory at new businesses all the time. Then it become more common. Then it'd be fresh on your head. You wouldn't even need instructions on how to do this or research it in the future, but you're probably not going to remember this the next time you have to create a new network. Maybe you'll remember that there's something that has to be done about this and you can research it. That's the key point of the class, is you know something needs to be done about it. That's pretty much all we got to do. That's pretty easy. As long as you understand and know how to get to the right spots. The domain name master, if you got to move it, it's pretty easy to do. It's found under Active Directory Domains and Trust. Again, you'd have to look and see what server you're connected to it and connect to the server you want to transfer it. We're not going to transfer it, but it'd be the same issue. If I right click and manage, no, that just brings up that. That's not what I needed to do. Just launches another Active Directory. If I go to right click and go to properties on it, is that what I'm clicking on? Why do I not see what I'm supposed to be seeing? Okay, I was right clicking on the wrong. Now you just got to right click on everything until you finally find it. If I right click, I found an operations masters. Notice this one's only talking about the domain naming master. And I could transfer it. I don't want to transfer it off server 1. It's supposed to be on server 1. But I'm just showing you that this is where you would go if you needed. If we need to upgrade server 1, I had to transfer this to the new server. And then I'd have to go figure out how to move the Schema Master. And even right now I'd have to go to Google and figure out what the command line was. It was like redserve32, some name of a DLL somewhere, /register or /force or something. I've done it, but quite rare. It's only in an upgrade situation that you need to move it somewhere. So, but that's easily to Google. How do I move the Schema Master in Active Directory? Read up the instructions. If you're doing it on production network, you probably want to set up a network like this, play, and move stuff around before you try it on the real thing. Sweet, so nothing's changing here. We still got global catalog, DC. We don't see anything visually. It's just the processing and the RAM and stuff in the background that these servers are doing is supposed to operate better. So global catalog's on server 1, the infrastructure master and those other 2 roles is on server 2. It's just more efficient. Will we notice anything? No, we've just got a test network and we're not going to have hundreds of people logging in at one time to our test network. At most we'll log in one or two different people and that's it. So no, we're not going to notice anything. It's just configuration if you had to go set it up, what's supposed to work the best. Cool. Any questions? You feel like an engineer now? Does any of that seem like way complicated? Maybe, but that's why people pay network admins a lot of money. They can remember stuff like this. Of course, this isn't part of somebody's normal job. They're like trying to sell hotel rooms or sell stuff to customers, chicken feed or something. They don't care about maintaining a computer network, so, or even trying to learn about it. Except for y'all. Y'all are the weird ones that want to learn this stuff. Why? Because it's fun? Hopefully not just for the salary. Hopefully just because it's fun. And then you go read on Bleeping Computer and you find this one little line of code that you can make as a hyperlink and send it to anybody, and they click on it and it blue screens their Windows 10 machine. It's not legal for me to do, but I went ahead and made all this, the web page and like an email, and sent it to myself and blue screen my Windows 10. I was like, cool, that's like really evil. That's fun, but I just can't use it for evil stuff. But at least I can think about it and see what would happen if I did it to somebody else. So that's the kind of weirdness you should be. You should be that weird. Okay, so now what do? We got 2 domain controllers up and running. I mean, we could take off, create user accounts. We could add a Windows 10 machine into our network and join it in. So I think I want to stick with still messing with servers. Still messing with the theme of centralized management. And I want to mess with the theme of most servers are being deployed core only, or recommended to be deployed core only. I think we need a core only server, command prompt only. That sounds fun. You're sitting there like, no, I've done enough Cisco commands. Like, yeah, it's fun. We need a core only system, plus we need a member server that can do other stuff that the Windows server is supposed to do, like file share, print share, things like that. Our domain controllers, you should not install any extra software on them. Maybe at most third-party antivirus or something, but Microsoft's Windows Defender has been really good lately. I personally would not put a third party on a domain controller. I'd just stick with Defender. But that's about the only thing extra I'd put on the domain controller. If I needed anything extra, agents maybe to back up the system if need be. Could be a possibility, but typically you just don't install anything else on the domain controller. Don't go web browsing the web on it or anything. Use a Windows 10 machine and look up stuff. Because they break and everything could be messed up. I mean, if Contoso.com goes down at UAMS, of course it's not Contoso.com at UAMS, but if their Active Directory goes down and they had to start from scratch, there's 29,000 something computers they'd have to physically go to each one of them and rejoin them all to the domain, because they would lose administrative connectivity to them. That's why you don't mess with the domain controllers or install anything or install any extra service on them, because what if a piece of software or another service has an exploit? If it's running on the domain controller, hacker will get into the domain controller, they all replicate between each other. If he decides to do something bad on one and corrupt everything, it could corrupt the whole thing, all the domain controllers. So that's why we want another server that's not running anything with the main controller and throw the other services on it. A security reason. Best practice in security. we cannot clone off of our differencing parent disk because you can't convert from a graphical one to a core or vice versa. You can only do that at install time. Unless you had 2012 server. 2012 server, you could just run a wizard and convert back and forth between the two. That was the only version you could. 2008 server, it was you had to install either command or one with the GUI. 2012, yeah, you could flip back and forth. 2016 and 2019, they went back to you can only do that at install time. I don't know why. I guess something end users did something that feature I guess corrupted itself, and they had too much support issues that they took that back away. That's all I can think of is it did something really bad at some company, and Microsoft says, oops, we can't quite engineer it to work. That's all I can think of. Or they didn't want to throw enough money at that and they said, just give it up. That's another thing too. Engineer died, figured it out. Got put in jail. Riser file system, yeah, the dude that did that, he murdered his wife, got thrown in jail. That's why that became unpopular in Linux for a while. He was the lead developer. Weird stuff happens. So I don't know what that was in Microsoft. Let's go to new virtual machine in our Hyper-V wizard. Let's go to next. The name, we're going to do the same naming convention, but name it server 3. I was going to say I should be more creative, but then I remember my first network administration job. The admin that set that network up was creative. He used Greek names for the servers. Thor was our main server. It was our PDC. We also put an email system on it, so everybody's email was like whatever teacher at thor.k12.ar.us. And I think that's just, how do they know that this is BV Public Schools? Where does Thor come into the middle of? So yeah, sometimes you gotta not be as creative, not name servers after your favorite hobby or anime cartoon characters and stuff. Maybe it needs to be something that along the lines of server 1, server 2, or the name of your company. It does turn out better that way, trust me. Experience the other way around. So I'm going to just go next. And it's the Gen 2. And the amount of RAM is going to be the 4096 with dynamic memory selected. So everything so far the same that we've done in the past. Same thing with networking. It's going to be internal networking. And the virtual hard disk, I'm going to put it at 30. We did 60 originally for the domain controllers, but I do have a reason for making this one smaller. It's only going to house the operating system and patches. We'll attach another drive to this later on to share stuff out. It's another best practice is you shouldn't share resources off the C drive. You should have another hard disk installed into the system that doesn't have any protected operating system files and stuff. That way if you accidentally share the entire drive to the world, they can't get access to the registry or to the DLL files that is running Windows and things like that. So we're keeping this small because we don't want to put anything extra on it. Yes?
Is it dynamic memory for the RAM?
It's dynamic memory, yes. So I go and click next. I'm going to install from that ISO, the 2016. So go and finish it out. Go ahead and start the install, but install the standard, the very top option without a GUI. Everything else should be the same. You should remember all those dollar boxes. It's just when it comes through that one, it's asking what for server installs do you want. You just leave a default. It should be at the top one. It will not have that desktop experience in parentheses out to the side. You just next all the way through and go ahead and install. Should be quicker because it doesn't have to load up all the graphics. Remember, you have to hit spacebar. You got to connect to it and hit spacebar. Maybe I should just let you fail and so I'm not going to talk through mine. I'm just going to go ahead and click everything and speed through install as fast as I can, because I hope that y'all can follow those dollar boxes now. If you screw up, we can just redo it. It's nothing major. So mine finished the dialog box of installing, and it's automatically rebooted the computer, and it's getting ready. It's about to see magic. About to see magic sometime.
2 hours later.
I like those YouTubes. They had the 2 hours, yeah. A long time later. There's the magic. You have to set the administrator password. Looks like OK is highlighted, so has anybody set the password yet? You should easily be able to follow. I'm going to hit enter. Well, I have to click, hit enter. Oh no, I can't click to get to the other. What do? Tab? Good. Be surprised how many people don't know they can tab between stuff. Well, when you don't have a mouse to work, tab is really cool. Shift tab goes backwards. You're sitting there trying to tab, you go one too far, like crap. You want to tab all the way through again. Shift tab goes back one, tab goes forward one. So I've typed my password 1, 2, 3, 4, hit enter. Yay, my password's been changed. Okay. Okay, where's my start menu? My high school teacher said command prompt was hacking and I should always close it. Okay. Uh-oh. Now what the heck do I do? You're hacking. Get to close that command prompt. Really? Okay, well, yeah, I closed down my command prompt. I got a black screen. My computer's running. It's not turned off. Can't right click. Start menu doesn't do anything. I'm like, I just closed down my interface into the computer. What do I do? Anybody have any tips?
What's the keyboard shortcut
So Windows R probably, no, Windows R doesn't work. Windows E? Nope, there's file export. It doesn't come with a lot of the graphical tools. Windows pause break? No, it doesn't bring up, there's not a graphical tool for that. So, what about Task Manager? Control Shift Escape? This is a key combination that does work. So, Control Shift and then escape and release all of them, and the Task Manager pops up. So that was kind of cool. So there are no running apps. I'll stare at it for a little bit. There is one thing I can click on. Well, it's a couple things. I can minimize it, maximize it. I can close it. I can also more details. And now I've got some more details. I can go File and run a new task. And guess what I can bring up when I click on File, run a new task? Command prompt. What is the shortcut? CMD. So yeah, I should have been in hardware software, probably maybe learned it from there or from somewhere else. CMD for command prompt, and click OK.
Is there a keyboard shortcut for that?
Ta-da! Keyboard shortcut for command prompt. The only keyboard shortcut I know is Shift F10. Does Shift F10 work? No. Shift F10 works during the installation, like right at the very beginning of when it's before you've started making any selections. Shift F10 works at the initial boot up of an installation media, but I don't know of a command prompt, and the Windows R didn't bring up the run command, and Explorer, Notepad works. Notepad works, and the file open, I can, browse the computer this way. However, I don't, there's Explorer. Explorer.exe doesn't exist in the core only, so you don't have a graphical file manager. So yeah, it sucks. That's why you want to manage it remotely. Except we're not joined to a domain yet, so we've got to figure out some way to join the thing to the domain.
Well, Google, here we go.
There's a lot of different ways it could join it to the domain. I could run a PowerShell command, I could run some DOS utilities, I could also run a system config menu, DOS menuing thing that I could actually have a little bit more control over to set like the time and date and remote access and joining it to the domain and all of that. So as simple as system config, abbreviated as sconfig, is basically what you run on a core system to get it staged to be remotely managed. Also some PowerShell. We've not run PowerShell commands. PowerShell is a scripting language. PowerShell is something that all of the companies that are on our advisory committee said that students need. They said students need to automate processes with PowerShell. That's as detailed as they got with me. I'm like, okay. So we've been implementing PowerShell. We do PowerShell automation here on campus, so I do know a lot of stuff that's needed. But yeah, sconfig is pretty neat. They give us at least that we can type numbers and hit enter, and it's a DOS batch menuing system. But it kind of looks like Server Manager under localhost, where I had all the things I could click on for like activating it and changing computer name. That's basically here, but they put numbers so I could get to each one and fix it. I don't want to do anything like that today. I mean, you could change your computer name if you wanted to. If you just wanted to do one thing today, change your computer name. If you're at that point, I would hit number 2 and change my computer name to server 3, and I'd restart the computer at that point. And then it's lunchtime. I didn't mean to hit 3. Cancel. Blank. Okay. There we go. I like mine in uppercase. It's pretty simple. Yes. There we go. That's all we're doing today. We gave it a name. But sconfig can go in and set the network settings, the DNS settings, join it to the main, activate the machine. I tried to originally do everything through command prompt and PowerShell. Tried to figure out all the PowerShell commands to make changes before I learned about sconfig. Then I was like, oh yeah, that's easier. It's cool to learn PowerShell and how to do it the other way, but just for speed purposes, sconfig was a lot faster. Now if I had to do 50 of them, I might find all the PowerShell commands and save them in notepads and then just change like computer name in each separate one and fill them on a thumb drive and run them real fast. But probably not. I'd probably run sconfig because I didn't want to study up. Okay, I'm just going to close that out. And we got a server 3 running. How much memory is it running? Well, mine just rebooted. You'll note that that amount of RAM will shrink quite a bit. Probably down to like 512. That right there is a core only, 604 meg. It's running some more services though than what ours is doing. So I don't know how long dynamic memory. It's normally not too long, a minute or two, and it should be using a lot less RAM.
Mine's down to 640.
640? Okay.